welcome to this week's edition of the Business of Sports Show. This is going to be a fantastic show. I know it because we have one of the best up-and-coming UFC fighters around at the moment, and best of all, he's Welsh as well. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to Jack Shaw.
How's everyone doing? Thanks for having me on.
No worries, mate. Great to have you on. So, for all those people out there who might not know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself, mate.
So, obviously, my name's Jack Shaw. I currently fight for the UFC. If anyone doesn't know what the UFC is, it's probably best known nowadays for Conor McGregor, I suppose. But it's actually the biggest MMA promotion then in the world. They're an American company, but obviously they have fights all over the world. So I went, I think it was 11-0 as a professional. They signed me. I'm now 13-0, 2-0 with the company. So I've been doing this a long time. Many years of graft to get where I am now. But it's something I've always loved doing. So that's who I am in brief, I suppose. For someone who doesn't know me, perhaps.
Fantastic, mate. So, I mean, during my research, I found that Dana White's the UFC president, the guy who started UFC. I mean, it's a $1 billion industry now, $1 billion company, and he described you as one of the hottest prospects to come out of the UK in recent years. How does that make you feel? Does that put a lot of weight on your shoulders, or does it put a target on your back? Really?
To be honest, like when he first, it's a funny story because when he first said it, it was actually on a video on Instagram, and it was the night before my first UFC fight. So if the stakes wasn't high enough, obviously he came out the night before and said that. So, but to be honest, I'm one of those, I sort of enjoy stuff like that. I'm not someone who feels a lot of pressure or tends to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. I think it's ultimately down to, when I fight, I do it because I enjoy doing it, because I'm good at it, and because it's something I've always done. I mean, I've had many compliments over the years, off Dana White being the biggest one, but even when I was with Cage Warriors, I had the president of Cage Warriors and Dan Hardy, who was a former UFC title challenger, speaking about, I'm the next artist prospect, and I'm the guy leading the march for Wales. So I've always had sort of extra compliments that may add pressure, but I've never seemed to let it get on top of me. I suppose it does put a little bit of a target on my back. With there's guys who've been in the UFC then for say 2-3 years, and Dana White doesn't know who they are. So for him to be talking about me sort of the night before I even fought for the promotion, just shows that the right people are watching and that he's taking notice. But I suppose it does put a little bit of a target on my back, but it's not something I'm concerned about. I mean, you win enough fights in the UFC and you climb high enough in the rankings, that target's always going to be there anyway. If you're not the number one in the division, or if you're climbing the ranks, there's someone below you who's looking to take you out to then take your spot on the ladder. So I think regardless in this sport, there's always going to be people who want to fight you, and there's always going to be that little bit of a target there. But it was just a nice compliment off him, and something to give me a nice little buzz, I suppose, pre-fight, the night before the fight. I had to try not to let it swell my ego before going in there, because it's all well and good him saying that. If I went in there and got chinned in the first minute, then me and him would have looked pretty stupid.
So, how did you actually get started in this? Because, well, I mean, just fascinated, because for me, it's never been something I've ever wanted to do, is get into the ring and start taking punches to the head or knees or anything. So how did you get into it?
Well, I actually started training as a kid. My father was actually my head coach, but he took me training before he'd even trained himself. So that's how long ago I started. I was 6 years old. And he just took me to like a local kickboxing club, basically. And I think it was just, as you do with kids, get them out of the house, burn a bit of energy. Probably so I didn't play him and my mother up too much, I suppose, try and burn me out before going to bed. But it's just something I always loved doing. I mean, he then started training at the same gym a couple of weeks after. Which then led on, I think, like 5 or 6 years later, he actually started his own gym. So, at the time, I'd done a lot of kickboxing, minimal sort of Brazilian jiu-jitsu or traditional jiu-jitsu as it was back then. No real MMA other than going up the gym with my dad or rolling around in the front room. Obviously, he was a fighter himself. He fought amateur and pro. So we was always it was always sort of in the house when we grew up. But again, I suppose I started really taking an interest in it when he opened his own gym. There was a lot of boys who were sort of 5-6 years older than me, local tough nuts around town, were there every night. And I suppose it stems from, I thought I was the kiddie, you know, I was the little 12-year-old chubby kid in the corner that thought he was the boy hanging about with all the older guys. And it just stemmed from me. I was never a naturally athletic kid, or I was never naturally good at any sport. I was decent at rugby, but the only real sport I sort of picked up fast was anything martial arts related. And although not the most athletic, I was always fit because I was training so much, and I just absorbed things really fast. My father always said as a kid, he would show me a technique, and it would be a matter of minutes before I was pulling it off in live sparring. And that's probably the only sport where I've had that sort of connection with. I was never naturally good at anything else. But I mean, I suppose looking back, I was like that. I know. I mean, must be martial arts must be in my blood, because before my father, none of my grandparents or uncles or nothing like that were ever martial artists. But whether it's been like kickboxing, boxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, anything I've ever been shown throughout my martial arts career, then right from like 6 years of age, I've always picked it up really fast and always, utilized it, rather than being one of those guys who just, you learn the technique and just pass it off as useless knowledge. So I must just have it in my blood. I must just be a martial artist down to the core. I'm not a natural fighter, as stupid as that may sound. I never grew up as a tough nut or a street fighter. I was never in trouble with fighting all the time. I mean, the only real fights I ever had was on the rugby field as a youngster when things got a bit heated. Other than that, it was all in the gym. I'm not a guy who walks around with his chest stuck out, looking for confrontation. If anything, I'd probably try and avoid it more than most people. So that's sort of how I got started. I mean, obviously, when I got like the age of 19, 20, I started winning a lot of amateur fights, and I was beating good level boys. And that's when I started to think, I can, if I stick this out for long enough, who knows what, I can possibly make a career out of this. I came out of university, sort of said, sod the degree. I'm not getting a job, and just worked part-time cleaning cars and spent the rest of my time in the gym. And thankfully it's paid off.
Well, yeah, definitely. And so tell us about the moment then that you got the offer from the UFC and signed on the dotted line. That must have been an absolute, was that the goal, to join UFC, or was there another organization that you had your eye on, like Bellinator or something like that? Tell us about that kind of moment and what was going through your head at that time.
Yeah, the UFC, like just to put it in perspective, the UFC is something I've always dreamed of since, probably 11, 12 years of age. I don't miss a UFC card. Nowadays they're on every weekend, but you go back 10 years ago, they were on sort of once a month, twice a month, maybe. And even back then, I would never miss a card. I'd have my dad up nice and early to watch it. And so I've always been like a massive fan by the UFC and all the fighters. So when I sort of won my last Cage Warriors fight, and this was potentially the next thing on the horizon, I started to become like a little bit like I suppose I had a bit of an anxious energy about me, like as in the sense of, is this it? Is this finally going to happen? And so the story behind it is, I was actually in the cinema with my girlfriend. We was watching some shit horror film. It was that bad. I can't even remember the name of it. But so we was watching this horror film, and my phone's ringing and ringing and ringing. So I finally pull out my pocket, and it's my dad. So I declined the call, and I texted him, "Stop ringing me. I'm in the cinema." So he texts me straight back within seconds, "Check your WhatsApp," because on WhatsApp is me, my father, and Graham Boylan, who's my manager. We got a group chat. Yeah. And he had posted in there to say, "Look, the UFC have been in touch. They're interested. They want to sign you. Leave it with me. It's just a matter of me sort of, negotiating like your contract, how many fights, how much money, blah, blah, blah." So I nudge my girlfriend. I'm like, "Look at this." So straight away, it's about half hour left this film. We switch off. We're not even taking no notice. The pair of us, everyone else, and they must have thought we were rude, because the pair of us just glued to my phone, waiting for the next message to come through. So we left the film. We went quiet for a little bit. Graham said, "Give me a couple of hours." We went for a bit of food, and then he rang me then and said, "Look, it's all done. The contract will be with us now in the next sort of 2 days." And it took a little bit longer than 2 days, I think, because they had a lot of shows on. But when it came through, and I signed it, it was me and my father there. It was weird to look at it because obviously my dad has Jack Marshman in the UFC at the time as well. So he'd seen UFC contracts before, but to see mine with my name and sort of on the last page, you've got to sign, and then there's Dana White's signature next to yours. So it was just surreal. It didn't feel real. To be honest, it didn't feel real until I was actually in the cage, waiting to fight for that first fight. I had the label of being signed to the UFC, but even at the weigh-ins, the fight week, it all felt a little bit surreal. And then obviously when I had the gloves strapped on ready to go, that's when it kicked in then, But it was just a whirlwind of a couple of weeks, I suppose, from having, because within a week of winning my last Cage Warriors fight, they sent the contract. So it was a mental couple of weeks, and then obviously getting the fight booked and stuff like that. It just seemed to be all systems go for about 3-4 months.
Brilliant, mate. Yeah, you can really imagine that, of being in the cinema and all of a sudden the phone goes off. Yeah, that's more important than watching some rubbish film.
Yeah, I was like, we better go.
But so how has COVID kind of affected everything at the moment? Because I know I saw that you fought in Abu Dhabi the other week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you had to quarantine and all this. Has it hampered your training and your progression?
It was very tough to start. Like, I'd be lying if I said otherwise. It was, when we first went to lockdown, I was due to fight in London in March, and we went to lockdown a week before the fight. The show got cancelled. It got moved to Las Vegas, but that basically meant us British guys couldn't go because we didn't have time to get a visa or nothing like that. Yeah. So straight away, I had gone basically from, I try and explain it to people, it's not like I was just plodding along with my training as normal. I was in an intense fight camp. I was a week out from the fight. My weight was all the way down. I was skinny. I was hungry. And then within like 2 days, I'd gone from that, with the mentality of I'm fighting next week to, we're in complete lockdown. The gyms are shut. So it was really tough first couple of weeks. Thankfully, I just bought an house before lockdown came into place. So that sort of kept me busy for a couple of weeks. But I went from training 4 days a week. 4 times a day, 5-6 days a week to, going for a run once a day and then working, laboring down the house. So it was tough for me more mentally than physically. I didn't get out of shape in the sense I was walking and running and cycling, but just not, the thought of I was looking on Instagram and all the Americans are still training as normal. And it's like, we're stuck here. We can't grapple. We can't do pads. I couldn't go see my boxing coach, my Thai coach. So it was very tough first couple of months. Then we got the green light, obviously, that pro athletes could train. So a select handful of us from the gym started training. And that was why I ended up being able to fight in Abu Dhabi because the UFC came to me. And luckily, it was sort of a week after I sort of started training a little bit more regular. So I took a punt on it, to be honest. It was a little bit more short notice than I'm used to. A little bit more, unprepared, I suppose, because the gyms are closed. But, obviously it paid off. But, the way it's looking now, I'm just praying that we don't go back into to a full lockdown again. I'm due to fight now in 3 weeks in Las Vegas. I've got to go to London next week to get my visa. So fingers crossed. If it can just hold out till I get my visa, I think I may be able to jump on a plane and go. So, it's definitely,
fingers crossed.
It's a mad situation, isn't it? It's something that, as a fighter, we've never dealt with before and probably never even thought about dealing, because there's never been a situation. If you're not in the gym, previously to COVID-19, it's because you don't want to be in the gym. It's not because, or you're injured. It's not because, by law that you can't go in there. So it's been a tough couple of months. But I'm glad we're back to a little bit of normality now, and hopefully it doesn't go back to square one where we gotta, go back into lockdown again. Is what I'm hoping and praying.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. You mentioned there about your boxing coach, your jiu-jitsu coach, and all those. What kind of team do you have behind you?
So I've got quite a big team. Obviously my father, Richard Shaw, is my head coach, so my MMA coach, my jiu-jitsu coach. He's the boss at the gym. He sort of oversees the camp. Puts everything in place. Yeah. Then I've got Carl Parker as well, who's based out of my gym, my MMA gym. He's sort of my wrestling coach and like the assistant coach, I suppose. He has just as much of input MMA-wise as my old man. It's just obviously the gym name is Shaw MMA, so that's why people sort of assume that My old man's the head coach. But if anything, they do it, side by side. Every one of us in the gym, we sort of got the two head coaches is Carl and my dad. I do my Thai boxing with Crew Heem, who I'm very fortunate to have. He's from Thailand. He was the head Thai trainer at one of the biggest Thai gyms out there, aka Thailand. Fortunately for us, he married a Welsh girl, and now he's living in Crickhowell. So, at Hereford now he's moved to. But fortunately, he comes up. I train with him once a week on my private, and then obviously do his class in the night. And he's without a doubt probably the most skilled kickboxing or Thai boxing coach I've ever worked with. I mean, just to put it into perspective, he's had 120 pro Thai fights, and he retired at 28 years of age. So that just goes to show the type of experience and knowledge he's got.
Massively.
Then I do my boxing with Gary Lockett, so anyone who knows anything about boxing in Wales, in the UK, knows who Gary Lockett is. He's coached Liam Williams, Gavin Rees, Enzo Macronelli, Chris Jenkins. He's got a team of young guns coming through now. And I'm very lucky to have Gary as well. Consider I'm not a boxer, I get to say I work with one of the best boxing coaches in the UK and probably even in the world. So he's someone I'm very close with, Gary. Me and him hit it up. We've been working about 5 years now, me and Gary, and we hit it off straight away. And he's brought my striking and my hands on no end. I mean, I get to spar now once a week with like Chris Jenkins and Reese Edwards, the boxing purists will know who they are, and they just bring me on loads as well. It's Gary's gym is actually the only gym that I go to now outside of my gym. Thankfully we got everything under one roof, but it's a nice refreshing change to go down there once or twice a week and hit pads or spar with the boys and get my ass handed to me a little bit in a discipline that is not completely mine, but I'm just thankful that I got those guys. And finally then I do my strength conditioning with Greg Carlo. Again, Greg actually fought for the gym back about 10 years ago. He was when he was in his early 20s, my father was his coach. He trained a couple of times, had a couple of injuries, and he went on to open like a bit of a CrossFit and a powerlifting gym. And I remember being about 19, 20, and I noticed all the top level guys in the UFC were all doing strength conditioning, and I wasn't doing any. So I took it upon myself to drop Greg a message. And he was like, yeah, pop to the gym Saturday and we'll have a chat. And me and him have been training 2-3 times a week ever since. And he's a very big influence in the camp as well, Greg. Like looking at myself as an athlete then rather than a fighter, a lot of the athletic traits I've got now, I never had 5 years ago. As I mentioned, I'm not the most athletic person in the world naturally. So I really had to work hard at it for 5 years. But, we're starting to see me do things now that would suggest otherwise that I am an athlete. So I got to give a big thanks to him as well. He's and Greg's one of those guys, like, despite being my S&C coach, he's a good friend of mine as well. Like, if I'm going to do a sprint session more times than not, he say, oh, go on then, rope me, and he'll come in and do it. Or, in lockdown, me and him were going out on the bikes or going out for runs. So despite being labelled as my S&C coach, he's someone I speak to Greg almost every day as well. So, I've got a real close-knit team around me. They all work with each other. They all sort of speak to each other. And my old man speaks to Gary and speaks to Greg and sort of lays out what we're looking to do, what the game plan is. So it's a team that I've had for a long time. And I, to be honest, I'd put them up against any team in the world. I wouldn't swap any of them out for anyone. I'm confident that with these guys, they can take me all the way to the top, and the guys in the gym as well.
Fantastic, man. And I think, it's one of those things about, you need a good team around you. I've seen it in business lots where people have said about getting business coaches and things like that, and then they've gone, well, what do I need that for?
Yeah.
But all you need to do is look at the world of sports. You have straight away said you've got 5 or 6 coaches, and there's probably a few other people that help you out.
Well, of course,
well.
I got like my nutritionist as well, John, who helps out. You got obviously the boys at the gym, spar. Then you factor in my girlfriend and my mother and my sister were running around for me like blue ass flies. It's so many factors. Like I say, a lot of me that's on the TV and doing a fight, and there's so many people that factor in behind the scenes, and none of them are yes men either. That's why I put down to me, being so successful. I haven't got no one around me who's just gonna, tell me I'm a beast and tell me I'm this. If I'm a bag of shit in a session, they'll be sure to let me know. They'll be sure to keep me grounded. And my teammates as well. And I'm sparring with the likes now of Brett Johns, Josh Reed, Scott Pedersen, all top level guys. And if I'm having an off day in the gym, they're going to expose it and they're going to put it on me. They every single day in that gym is a graft. Like me and Brett, two of the top, probably the two top bantamweights in Europe. And there's days where he'll absolutely hammer me. There's days where I may beat him. There's days where you can't put a pin between us, and that's what you need. I'm not like the big fish in the small pond. Then every one of my coaches will tell me where I'm going wrong, and every one of my training partners, either on my level or going to be on my level in the next few years and are capable of pushing me to the limit every day. And I think that's the ingredient you need for a successful team. You don't need people who are just there to tell you what you want to hear. You want people who are there to tell you what you need to hear.
Yeah, and I think that really comes across, because having watched a few interviews you've given, even in the chat here, you do come across as very humble and very grounded. I think when people think of UFC, they think of Conor McGregor, the swagger, the mouth firing off the shots left, right, and center. But actually, you do come across as very, very humble and grounded. How important is that to you?
to me, to me personally, it's very important, because look, what Conor McGregor does is great, and that's who he is as a person. He's the cheeky chappy, he's sharp with his tongue, he's got that natural swagger. But the only problem we've had sort of the last couple of years is people have seen how successful he's made Conor and how much money he's made, and now everyone wants to emulate that style. Like, everyone wants to be Conor McGregor now. But as the song goes, there is only one Conor McGregor. He's been a success because that's who he is. So when I was coming up, I never wanted to be like anyone else. I was just thought, I've always said to myself, be true to yourself, be who you are. And, that's how people sort of relate to me, I think. And Graham Boylan once said it before one of my fights. He said, I think people sort of look at me as like the kid next door. I don't look like a fighter. I don't come across like the big mouth, the arrogant, tough guy. I don't come across like a fighter. I just am who I am. And I think people can relate to it, because, a lot of people see me and think, he's very much like myself. I like to think I'm humble, I'm down to earth. I've got, I don't sort of, sometimes I get uncomfortable sort of talking about my success sometimes, and talking, people sort of tell me how good I am, and I go a bit red in the face, and I'm like, I'd rather talk about what I could do better, So I've always been humble, and a big inspiration of mine has been George St. Pierre. I mean, going back 10 years ago, he was always the respectful martial artist guy. Never took no shit. If people wanted to, disrespect him, then he would take it upon himself to obviously show him who's the boss in the cage, but was never disrespectful, never looked the trash talk, always come across like just your normal guy. And that's I don't know if it's because I was such a big fan of his as a kid, and that's why I've sort of developed this mentality, or, I was always brought up to be, the nice guy, and brought up to be sort of non-confrontational and not be a dick, basically. My mother and father, that's how they brought me up, to respect people and sort of treat people how you want to be treated. And that's how I try and live my life. It's not an act. I don't act a different way on camera or when doing my interviews. It's just, I am who I am. And if people like it, they like it. If they don't, then they don't have to. That's the nature of the game. There'll always be people who like you and who dislike you. But I'm gonna be who I'm gonna be. If I went out there and tried to speak like McGregor, I'd look like a fool. People would pick on all of it straight away. Like, that's stage. So I'm not saying it doesn't work. There's people in the gym like I train with Owen Elliott. He's sharp as they come with a tongue, and online he's got this personality where he's a little bit like the Chael Sonnens, and the sort of reminds you of like the pro wrestlers. Whereas if I tried to do that, I'd probably mess it up. So this is who I am. It's not to say everyone has got to be like I am, but this is just how I choose to be.
Yeah, and I think that's a credit to you, really, because I think even looking at, say, the world of boxing, where the fighters try and wind each other up, the press conferences. I mean, I always remember back to the Tyson Fury, was it the Klitschko one, where he ran in wearing a Batman suit and all of that, and think, okay, it's a bit of a laugh, but does it distract from the actual fight and what they're actually there for?
I'm not against all that. Don't get me wrong. Like, what Tyson Fury does is great, because he obviously backs it up in the ring. But But then, there's people like Mike Tyson who didn't, go back to Mike Tyson's fight, didn't say a lot, was very intense, and that's how he fought. I suppose you watch Tyson Fury, the way he is in the ring sort of reminds you of how he is out the ring. He's very playful and relaxed and, taunting, and it's each to their own. I'm not saying it's right. There's not a right way and a wrong way to do it. But I think if you're genuine and people can see that, and I think, you'll sell the tickets and people will be interested to watch regardless of how you behave.
Totally. So talk us through your kind of typical kind of prep for a fight then, before COVID. So none of the quarantine and all of that. What would you normally do, say, the week before, a fight into the run up?
So just like a normal weekend fight camp then is it's very intense. Everything sort of by the book. It's a busy schedule. When the thing I try and say to people is, for boxers, for example, then all they got to focus on is their boxing. They can do their running and their S&C, outside of that. But with me, there's so many disciplines I've got to be sharp on. So I've got to sort of get that 3-4 sessions a day in. Like an average, for example, Tuesday then, an average day for me in fight camp is sort of get up in my morning, and it'll either be it'll depend on what the midday session is, but it'll either be a sprint session or it'll be sort of like a longer run. The sprint session sort of lasts around about 40 minutes, and then I'll slow plod or slow walk for 20 to wrap it up. The hour run is sort of like a consistent pace. I aim for, in an hour, sort of aim for anywhere between 10 and 13, 14 kilometers, just plodding along nicely, just burning the fat. Then my midday or my 11 o'clock session usually tends to be, it's either going to be Thai boxing or boxing. So, and Thai boxing is like a private with the coach, so it's pad work, specific fight specific drills, that's relevant to the opponent. Same with my boxing pad work, or it might be boxing sparring. So I'll go down to Gary's and do sort of 6 to 8 round sparring, and then some bag rounds to finish. Back to the gym in the night then. S&C usually then before my night session. So S&C, again, it depends on the night session. So a Tuesday night then is more of a class. So it's like technique for an hour and some light sparring. So I can afford to push it a little bit harder on a Tuesday in the S&C, because I haven't got to worry about keeping too much energy for the Tuesday class. But for example, like a Monday night, we spar hard. And a Thursday night and a Friday night we spar hard. So if I have S&C on those days before, it's more sort of strength based and light cardio rather than intense stuff. But there's so much again. You've got your sparring, your MMA sparring, your striking sparring, your wrestling, your grappling, your fight specific sparring. Where you're going to go out and try and fight how you're going to fight against your opponent. Yeah. So it's very intense. I mean, it's sort of 5-6 days. It's 5 days a week, 3-4 times a day. Saturday morning, then I'll get 2 sessions in nice and early. So I've got a long rest then until obviously Monday morning. Fight week is a little bit more relaxed because you're cutting your carbs, you're bringing your weight down. So that's just sort of more slow burning stuff, sweating to get the weight off, no sparring, no weights, nothing heavy that's going to make you ready for Saturday.
Mate, do you not just think it might be easier to just stick with one discipline and just go boxing instead of all of that?
I tell you what, I sometimes I do think it'd probably be easier to get a nice little office job or something like that. But, thankfully it pays well. And, how many people can say they get a, they do what they love every day. I got friends who sort of play rugby and football, and I know they'd love to be professional rugby players or professional football players. But, so I'm fortunate really when I look at the bigger picture, And I mean, I always say to people, I don't live to fight. I fight so that I can live a good life. As much as I love fighting, I've got the balance. When I come home from the gym in the night with my girlfriend, I switch off from it completely. I try to switch off from it on the weekends, other than watching the UFC. But I mean, I enjoy doing that. And when I'm out to fight camp, I do reel it back a little bit. I drop the training down to sort of twice a day, not so intense, and keeping that balance. I think that's why I enjoy it so much. It's not something I'm going to be able to do forever, but it's only so long and so many years your body can take that sort of impact and that sort of training for. So I'm just enjoy it while it lasts, for as long as it lasts. I don't want to do it forever. I don't want to do it till I'm 45 like some of these guys. I don't want to be fighting just for the money. I want to do it because I love doing it. And when the day comes, I think I've made enough, and the the fire is starting to dim a little bit, it'll be the day I knock it on the head. But at least I'll be able to look back. I mean, I could get a 9 to 5 job tomorrow, and I could still look back and say, you've had 5-6 years of truly doing what you love. There's not many people who get to say that.
Yeah. So, and that's quite interesting, because have you thought about what's after, all of this? So when you do decide that the fire is dimming a little bit, and you decide, enough is enough, go off and do something else, what would that something else be?
Yeah, I definitely thought about it. I mean, I don't want to be one of them guys who, I don't want to solely rely on fighting, because it's a dangerous game. I mean, I could break a leg or break an arm tomorrow, and they might say to you, look, that's never going to recover tidy. You're never going to be able to fight again. So there's a lot. I mean, I've obviously, my father runs the gym, and I help run the gym with him. So, I mean, I'll always be in the gym coaching and training the boys, regardless of whether I'm fighting or not. So that's an avenue I'd love to go down. I've got a degree. I'm probably not going to bother using it, to be honest, because I probably can't remember anything from it. But something I've always enjoyed and wanted to go down the route of is obviously property. I've always, when buying this house and doing it out, stuff like that, I enjoyed it, to be honest, which I didn't think I would. So I've got a little bit of money behind me now, thankfully, from the UFC. So if what I'm going to start doing, hopefully, is build a bit of a property portfolio sort of the next couple of years whilst I'm still fighting, so that, when I do decide to call it a day, I've got something I can fall back on, and a little bit of a safety net, I suppose. But I mean, the way I've got it pictured in my mind is when I retire, I'll just become a coach anyway. I'll be down the gym coaching every night of the week. And if I can make a little bit of money doing that, great. If not, I'm sure I'll find a way to do something. I got some good people around me anyway, so it's one of them ones you don't want to think about it too much. But I think at the same time, you'd be foolish not to have a sort of backup plan, because of how dangerous the sport is and how quick things can turn. So it's definitely something I've thought about, but we're a good few years away from that yet, anyway.
Hopefully, yeah. Fingers crossed for all that, and fingers crossed for a lot more success in it. So, what's next? Who are you fighting next? You said about you're fighting in Vegas in a couple of weeks' time, hopefully. Who's that against?
Yeah, I'm fighting a guy. Well, they haven't officially announced it, but every other media outlet have seemed to get it, so I'm going to talk about it anyway. But so I'm fighting a guy called Khalid Taha. He's 2-1 in the well, technically he's 1-1, because his last fight he tested positive for steroids, I think it was, or a masking agency. So his last fight got overturned to a no contest. But he's 2-1. I mean, he won the fight regardless of whatever, the result. I watched him win the fight, so whether they overturned the result or not, he lost the first fight in the UFC on short notice. He had a big knockout win then, and he had a good submission win. So he's a very dangerous opponent. 100% my toughest test to date. Big power puncher, strong guy. But to be honest, I feel very confident going in. We've had a lot longer to prep. I mean, with the last fight with COVID, I think I had 4 pullouts, so I ended up fighting, planning to fight 4 different guys. Whereas with this guy, I had a little bit longer to sort of watch him, for the team to get a plan together. So it's one of them ones, I'm very confident in it. It's a tough fight. I'm not, under no illusion that I'm not going to go out there and steamroller him. But if I fight my fight and fight the game plan, then I think I'll definitely be able to put him away. I do see me getting the finish over him, and obviously hopefully I can move on then to, maybe get a fight that could possibly put me in the rankings, or perhaps, one more fight and then get a shot at the rankings. But if I win this fighting style, I don't see why I won't be, pushing towards the top. And fighting in Vegas there's always a couple of extra eyes on you, when you're out in America fighting. The bosses, Dana White's their cage side, all the matchmakers are their cage side. So there's always those couple of extra eyes that are watching you and could potentially help push you on to the next sort of phase of my career. So it's a big deal for me to be going out there to fight. Shame there's no fans. I know a couple of my friends and family would have loved the week in Vegas, I'm sure. But regardless, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to getting the job done.
No, you mentioned that he tested positive for a masking agent or something. One of my previous interviews was with Sharon Davis, the Olympic swimmer, who actually lost out on a gold medal at the Olympics to an East German who was found to have been taking drugs. Does that frustrate you that you might be coming up against somebody who has, used substances to enhance their performances, or things like that? I mean, there's a whole thing with drug testing and stuff like that. From the inside, from a fighter's point of view, is that frustrating that people are doing these things?
The only thing that frustrates me is the length of time they have to serve on a ban. Because we're all tested 24/7, so we got the USADA app on our phones. I mean, I got tested last week. They turned up the gym out of the blue and tested me, and I'm all for it. I mean, it shows a little bit of mental weakness to me, if I'm honest. If you've got to take a steroid or whatever it is, I don't know. This is how clued up I am on drug doping. But if you've got a blood dope or take steroids or whatever, you can't be that confident in your ability and your skill. Same, people say they take it to help them lose weight. Well, it's like, we also can't be that committed, and that prepared as you make it up, because you need that little bit of extra boost. So the only thing that pisses me off of it is the ban. I mean, he got caught, openly cheating, and they banned him for a year. So I mean, a year is not that long. I mean, when you factor in COVID-19, I had 10 months between my last fight and the fight before. So I've done nearly a year just on, situation that's out of my control. So he's done 12 months, and I mean, 6 months of that, the world's been in shutdown. So there's a guy, TJ Dillashaw, used to be the bantamweight champion. He dropped the flyweight. He looked terrible. Got knocked out in 20 seconds. Drug test comes back. He was blood doping, and he openly came out and admitted, yeah, I did it. So they hit him with a 2-year ban. And it's like, what 2 years for blood doping? There's people in cycling and stuff that have been banned for life. It's like, if you get caught, don't be wrong, there's certain things like tainted supplements and stuff like marijuana, stuff like that. I can deal with a minor ban for that, because sometimes maybe you're not always in the wrong, or like people smoking weed, in my opinion, I don't do it, but in my opinion, it's not going to aid their performance. So maybe a 12-month, 6-month ban for that I can relate to. But blood doping and steroids, you should ban them for life. We're not kicking a football about. We're in a sport where the ultimate goal, we can paint it up as much as we want. The ultimate goal is to obviously either knock your opponent out, or submit them, or do enough damage for 3 rounds that the judges are going to give you the fight over them. We're not kicking a football about, or cycling or anything like that. This is a combat sport. So it's dangerous enough as it is, without people cheating and going out there and taking certain things that's going to enable them to sort of be more powerful and stronger and punch harder and be more explosive. So if they want to do it, that's fine. I mean, you do what you want to do, but if you get caught doing it, it should be a ban for life. That's my opinion on it.
And I think that's really, really true, because, as you said, it's a combat sport. So they're taking these things to be able to do more damage to you.
Exactly.
And that's got to be that's wrong on so many levels.
Blood doping. I mean, blood doping is not an easy thing to do. It's you're not. It's not like you took a tablet or something like that. It's a complex process. Blood doping, from what I've seen on documentaries and online and stuff. So to come out and admit, oh yeah, I did do it, and then say, oh, okay, 2-year ban. What's the sense in that? There's a guy, Nick Diaz, got banned back in 2012 for 5 years because it was his second offense of smoking weed. And it's like, now you're going to give someone a 2-year ban for blood doping, but you're going to ban him for 5 years for smoking weed. It doesn't make any sense, So that's the one. I'm all for USADA, and I'm a big advocate of it. And then the 24/7 blood testing and P testing is spot on. If you're gonna cheat nowadays, you're gonna get caught. But they need to reassess the disciplinary side of it. If you get caught in steroids in your system, or growth hormone, testosterone boost, blood doping, it should be a life ban. Simple as.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting take on it, because I think a lot of people are just, oh well, if you're taking something, you're taking something, but actually nobody really looks at the length of the ban. And as you said, it should be a life ban, because, well, you're cheating.
Well, I mean, they come back and it's like, oh, you've served, they've served his time, all is fine, now it's back to normal. It's like, well, no, it doesn't matter if he served his time, he did what he did,
Yeah, he made that decision.
Shouldn't have the opportunity to come again. And I mean, the guy who I'm fighting, I read online, we have a couple of people tag me and stuff and whatever, that apparently the doctor gave him a tablet or something for a swollen eye, and he had a masking agent in it, and that's why he got popped. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But something as severe as blood doping, and like TJ Dillashaw, and he's come out and admitted that he's done it. It should be a massive ban. If it's not a lifetime ban, it should be like a 5-10 year ban at least.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So one thing I always ask everybody that comes on the show is for 3 tips for success. So what would be yours that you want to share with everyone?
Like 3, there's so many I could give, but like my first one would probably be try and stay as humble as you can, or surround yourself with people who are gonna help you keep humble.
Yeah.
Don't surround yourself with yes men and phonies, like people who've never been in your position. And there's nothing worse than sort of a guy who's maybe coaching an MMA fighter or a boxer and they've never stepped in there themselves, never cut no weight, never had that adrenaline rush or that adrenaline dump. So, try and surround yourself with people try and stay humble, or surround yourself with people, who are going to keep you humble. Number 2 would be, I tell all the kids in the gym, dedicate yourself. If you're going to do something, and it's not just fighting, that's in anything in life, whatever you're going to do, correctly and completely dedicate yourself. You can't play about with fighting, because if you want to do it as a career, you've got to be 100% in, all in, dedicated. It's the same as anything. You could look at anything, any job. If you want to be a carpenter, if you're going to half-ass carpentry or half-ass plastering or half-ass being an electrician, you're not going to be very good at it. You're not going to get any business. You're probably not going to end up, you're going to end up doing something else. It's the same with fighting or sports. The amount of boys I know could have gone on to be elite level rugby players, but just never dedicated themselves correctly. And that leads to the third one is, nothing worth having comes without sacrifice. So be willing to sacrifice, time away from drinking and, time away from your family. Like the amount of Christmas parties and birthday parties and anniversaries. I haven't celebrated a birthday for 5-6 years. So I've always seemed to be in fight camp. But these are sacrifices you sacrifice. And again, that's not just in fighting, that's in anything in life. The amount of boys I know could have been professional rugby players, but just wouldn't sacrifice going out with the boys and smoking and drinking on the weekend, and wouldn't sacrifice a night on the Xbox to go training in the week. And and I know for a fact, they're looking back now 10 years down the line and thinking, God, I wish I did what, I wish I did it back then, because I look at myself as a kid, and one thing no one can ever say to me is I didn't sacrifice. I was in the gym 5-6 nights a week, even as like a 14, 15-year-old. I was even dieting for competitions at 15, 16 when all the boys are on the Xbox eating pizza and chocolate and stuff like that. So, be prepared to make sacrifices. There will always be another time. You may miss a birthday party this year, and you may miss it next year and the year after, but there'll be a time where you won't miss it.
Yeah.
My father always says to me, all the sacrifice I'm making now, potentially I could retire at sort of 30, 35 years of age. If I live to 70, that's 35 years I've got of doing what I want and living life how I want. There's people stuck in sort of jobs now where they've got to work now till 70, 75 years of age, something like that.
Keeps moving, yeah.
By the time they retire, then they've got 4, 5, maybe 10 years if they're lucky of living and enjoying life. Whereas I would rather sacrifice now from the age of 10 to the age of 30, and then be able to set myself up and live a life worth living for the years afterwards, rather than, I said it earlier in the interview, you wanna work so that you can live. You don't want to live so that you gotta work. So yeah, be humble, or find people that's gonna keep you humble. Be dedicated and be willing to sacrifice.
Mate, absolutely fantastic tips and really, really good. It's been fantastic having you on the show. Thanks for giving up your time and in between training for your next fight. So
no problem, anytime.
Fingers crossed for the next fight. So take it to the next. What is it? 13-0 if you win.
14-0 if I win.
14-0.
The last one was unlucky 13, so thankfully I wasn't unlucky on 13. Fingers crossed, I won't be unlucky on 14 either.
Mate, everything's crossed for you, mate, and know you're going to smash it. So, and once again, thanks for coming on the show.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.